Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and welcome to my very first weekly entertainment wrap-up. This idea was inspired by Christy over at Melbourne on My Mind, who does a weekly wrap-up of all the books she reads in a week, and she reads an average of 9 books a week because she's super quick and she's awesome. So if you like this format, definitely check out her channel below. I, however, can't read that many books in a week. I am a very slow reader, even though I absolutely love reading. So instead of just wrapping up the books that I read in a week, which sometimes might be 1 or 2, I've decided I'm going to wrap up all of my entertainment for the week, so what I read, what I listen to, and what I watch. Since it's a new year, I started a whole new planner and I started writing down exactly what I read every day, what I watched every day, and what I listened to every day. And in these videos, I'm going to talk about just the things that I finished reading in a week instead of being like, I'm still slogging through blah, and then not giving you any information on it. I've also decided that when it comes to what I've watched, especially with my TV shows, I'll let you know how much of the TV show I watched, but I'm not going to give you any spoilers because I would be super mad if somebody spoiled me on a TV show, even though the show that I'm watching right now is over a decade old. I mean, it's still on TV right now, but there's like 13, whatever. So without any ado, this is my weekly wrap-up for January 1st through 7th because 2017 lined up perfectly with the Sunday to Saturday calendar. I finished reading 2 books this week. The first one is Hag Seed by Margaret Atwood, and the second one is The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. Hag Seed is a modern retelling of Shakespeare's The Tempest, and that's not one of Shakespeare's plays that I was particularly familiar with. However, I had heard a little bit about it. I mean, I did study theater, for goodness sake. What I found interesting about this modern adaptation is the play itself factored heavily into the actual format of the book and the plot of the book. Now, because we're talking about a Shakespearean plot, there were obviously things that happened within this plot that were highly implausible and made you think you would get in a lot of trouble for what you just did, but apparently it's just hunky-dory. And I kind of like that because that's how you come away from some Shakespeare plays anyway. If you're a fan of modern Shakespeare adaptations, I definitely recommend this one. First 15 Lives of Harry August is a sci-fi book that my book club read for the month of January, and it does exactly what it says. It follows the first 15 lives of a man named Harry August. The basic premise of this one is that Harry August is born, he lives, and when he dies, he comes back and is born again. Between the ages of 3 and 6, he starts remembering things from his previous time around, and understandably, this messes with this small child's mind quite badly. However, it turns out that 1 in every 100,000 people or so is exactly like Harry, and goes through this process of every time they die, they are reborn right at the beginning of their timeline again and continue. And since he remembers everything from previous lives, he's basically able to go on and live several different lives, learn several different professions, and then makes friends with other people that are like him, as well as has whole lifetimes with people that aren't. It's important to note that this isn't a time-traveling novel, but it kind of feels like it at some points because of the way that different generations can communicate with each other. This part might get a little bit tricky, so bear with me. Basically, you have the very beginning of time, and then you have the very end of time. It turns out that Harry is just a blip somewhere along that timeline, just like we are. But every time we get to the end of time, it resets and every single person lives out again. There's a really big exception to that, but that's a huge spoiler, so I'm not telling you about it. Because the people near the end of the timeline kind of know how the world generally ends, when that starts changing, they send messages back through different people so that people in previous generations find out. And the way they do that is somebody who is very, very young finds somebody who is very, very old, and also one of these people who relives their lives, tells them, and then when this person dies, they can go back and tell the people from their generation once you get back to that timeline. Overall, I and my book club both really enjoyed this, and it made for a really interesting discussion. Moving on to what I watched this week, I am watching Grey's Anatomy at this point, because Shonda Rhimes is amazing, and because this show is amazing. And I've been writing down specifically how many episodes I watch every day, and I started on season 4, episode 16, and by the end of the week I was at season 5, episode 17, so I watched just over a season in a week. I feel like this is going to be a running theme throughout this, but if you have not watched Grey's Anatomy, watch Grey's Anatomy. It's on Netflix. Watch it. It is so good. This week I also watched 2 episodes of Luke Cage, episodes 9 and 10, but obviously there's excellent diversity in this cast. Also, I love that Rosario Dawson, who plays Claire in both Daredevil and Jessica Jones, has a much larger role in Luke Cage. And then I did watch one movie this week as well, which was Fellowship of the Ring, which I hadn't seen since it came out when I was in high school. So it's been a while. This week I listened to a couple of episodes of Dear Hank and John, which is a podcast that I absolutely love. I also listened to at least one episode of Lore, which is just incredibly fascinating. And then the book that I was listening to and finished this week is The Magicians by Lev Grossman. The Magicians is basically Harry Potter, but for adults. It's not a wizarding school, it's a magician school. They are doing magic. But you follow around Quentin, who is this character who grew up reading these books about this magical land called Fillory, which I like to think of as an adaptation of Narnia. He even taught himself some sleight of hand magic. He was totally into magic, just wouldn't really tell people about it. And then suddenly he's going to this school and learning actual magic. It took me a really long time to get through this one. It's about 18 hours when you're listening to it, but the narrator was great. I also thought that this was a standalone book, but the other day at work somebody returned the second and third books, so I guess I'm going to have to read those eventually. That is it for week 1 of my weekly entertainment wrap-up. If you have read, listened to, or watched any of these, let me know about down in the comments below. No spoilers, blah blah blah. If you want to talk about these things more in depth with spoiler-type content, you can either send me an email or DM me on Twitter. Like you've probably gathered, this is going to be a weekly series, and because this is currently the 3rd week of the year, the 2nd week will be up very, very soon. If you like this video, let me know down below, give it a thumbs up or share it to your friends. If you're not already subscribed to me, hit that subscribe button down below and ring that notification bell if you feel like it, and I will talk to you later. Bye!